she could see Gil's chest rising and falling with panicked breaths. "Vandal!" he shouted again. There was rage on his face when he turned back to Kaz. "Always one step ahead, aren't you?" "Gilles, when it comes to you, I'd say I have a running start." But Gilles just smiled, a tiny smile, tight and satisfied, a victor's smile. Inej realized with fresh fear. The race isn't over yet. Gilles reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy black pistol. "Finally," Kaz said, "the big reveal. Now Jesper can stop kneeing over Bollinger like a wet-eyed woman." Jesper stared at the gun with stunned, furious eyes. Bollinger searched him. "Oh, Big Bull, you idiot," he groaned. Inej couldn't believe what she was seeing. The guard in her arms released a tiny squeak. In her anger and surprise, she'd accidentally tightened her grip. "Relax," she said, easing her hold. But all saints, she wanted to put a knife through something. Big Bollinger had been the one to pat down Gilles. There was no way he could have missed the pistol. He betrayed them. Was that why Kaz had insisted on bringing Big Bollinger out here tonight? So he could have public confirmation that Bollinger had gone over to the Black Tips? It was certainly why he let Holst put a bullet in Bollinger's gut. But so what? Now everyone knew Big Bull was a traitor. Kaz still had a gun pointed at his chest. Gilles smirked. "Kaz Brecker, the great escape artist. How are you going to wriggle your way out of this one?" "Going out the same way I came in." Kaz ignored the pistol, turning his attention to the big man laying on the ground. "Do you know what your problem is, Bollinger?" He jabbed at the wound in Big Bull's stomach with the tip of his cane. "That wasn't a rhetorical question. Do you know what your biggest problem is?" Bollinger mewed. "No." "Give me a guess," Kaz hissed. Big Bull said nothing, just released another trembling whimper. "All right, I'll tell you. You're lazy. I know it. Everyone knows it. So I had to ask myself why my laziest bouncer was getting up early twice a week to walk 2 extra miles to Silas Fry for breakfast, especially when the eggs are so much better at the Couperon." Big Bull became an early riser. The Black Tips started throwing their weight around Fifth Harbor, and then intercept our biggest shipment of yurta. It wasn't a tough connection to make. He sighed and he said to Gilles, "This is what happens when stupid people start making bad plans. Big plans, yeah? Doesn't matter much now, does it?" replied Gilles. "This gets ugly. I'm shooting from close range. Maybe your guards get me, or my guys, but no way you're going to dodge this bullet." Kaz stepped into the barrel of the gun so that it was pressed directly against his chest. "No way at all, Gilles. You think I won't do it?" "Oh, I think you'll do it gladly, with a song in your black heart, but you won't. Not tonight." Gilles' finger twitched on the trigger. "Kaz," Jesper said, "this whole shoot me thing is starting to concern me." Uman didn't bother to object, Jesper mouthing off this time. One man was down. Neutral territory had been violated. The sharp tang of gunpowder already hung in the air, and along with it a question, unspoken in the quiet, as if the Reaper himself awaited the answer. How much blood will be shed tonight? In the distance, a siren wailed. 19 Bergstraat, Kaz said. Gilles had been shifting slightly from foot to foot. Now he went very still. "That's your girl's address, isn't it, Gilles?" Gilles swallowed. "Don't have a girl." "Oh, yes, you do," crooned Kaz. "She's pretty, too. Well, pretty enough for a fink like you. Seems sweet. You love her, don't you?" Even from the rooftop, Inej could see the sheen of sweat on Gilles' waxen face. "Of course you do. No one that fine should ever have looked twice at barrel scum like you. But she's different. She finds you charming. Sure sign of madness, if you ask me. But love is strange in that way. Does she like to rest her pretty head on your shoulder? Listen to you talk about your day?" Gilles looked at Kaz as if he was finally seeing him for the first time. The boy he'd been talking to had been cocky, reckless, easily amused, but not frightened. Not really. Now the monster was here, dead-eyed and unafraid. Kaz Brecker was gone, and dirty hands could come out to see the rough work done. "She lives at 19 Bergstraat," Kaz said in his gravelly rasp. 3 floors up, germaniums in the window boxes. There are 2 dregs waiting outside her door right now. And if I don't walk out of here whole and feeling righteous, they will set that place alight from floor to rooftop. It will go up in seconds, burning from both ends with poor Elise trapped in the middle. Her blonde hair will catch fire first, like a wick of a candle. You're bluffing, said Giles, but his pistol hand was trembling. Kaz lifted his head and inhaled deeply. Getting late now. You heard the siren. I smell the harbor on the wind. Sea and salt. And maybe, is that smoke I smell too? There was pleasure in his voice. Oh, saints, Kaz, Inej thought miserably. What have you done now? Again, Giles' fingers twitched on the trigger, and Inej tensed. I know, Giles, I know, Kaz said sympathetically. All that planning and scheming and bribing for nothing. That's what you're thinking right now. How bad it will feel to walk home knowing that you've lost. How angry your boss is going to be when you show up empty-handed and that much poorer for it. How satisfying it will be to put a bullet in my heart. You can do it. Pull the trigger. We can all go down together. They can take our bodies out to the Reaper's barge for burning, like all paupers do. Or you can take the blow to your pride, go back to Barstrat, lay your head in your girl's lap, fall asleep, still breathing, and dream of revenge. It's up to you, Giles. Do we go home tonight? Giles searched Kaz's gaze, and whatever he saw there made his shoulders sag. Inej was surprised to feel a pang of pity for him. He walked into this place, buoyed on Bravo, a survivor, a champion of the barrel. He'd leave as another victim of Kaz Brecker. You'll get what's coming to you someday, Brecker. I will, said Kaz, if there's any justice in the world, and we all know how likely that is. Giles let his arms drop. The pistol hung uselessly by his side. Kaz stepped back, brushing the front of his shirt where the gun barrel had rested. Go and tell your general to keep the black tips out of Fifth Harbor, and that we expect him to make amends for the shipment of Yurta we lost, plus 5 cents for drawing steel on neutral ground, and 5% more for being such a spectacular bunch of asses. Then Kaz's cane swung in a sudden sharp arc. Giles screamed at his wrist, bones shattered. The gun clattered on the paving stones. I stood down, cried Giles, cradling his hand. I stood down. You draw on me again, I'll break both your wrists, and you'll have to hire someone to help you take a piss. Kaz tipped the brim of his hat with the head of his cane. Or maybe you can get the lovely Elise to do it for you. Kaz crouched beside Bolliger. The big man whimpered. Look at me, Bolliger. Assuming you don't bleed to death tonight, you'll have until sunset tomorrow to get out of Ketterdam. I hear you're anywhere near the city limits, and they'll find you stuffed in a keg at Silas Fry. And then he looked at Giles. You help Bolliger, or I find out he's running with the black tips. Don't think I won't come after you. Please, Kaz, moaned Bolliger. You had a home, and you put a wrecking ball through the front door, Bolliger. Don't look for sympathy from me. He rose and checked his pocket watch. I didn't expect this to go on so long. I'd best be on my way, or poor Elise will be getting a trifle warm. Giles shook his head. There's something wrong with you, Brecker. I don't know what you are, but you're not made right. Kaz cocked his head to one side. You're from the suburbs, aren't you, Giles? Came from the city to try your luck? He smoothed his lapel with one gloved hand. Well, I'm the kind of bastard they only manufacture in the barrel. Despite the loaded gun at the black tip's feet, Kaz turned his back on them and limped across the cobblestones towards the eastern arch. Jesper squatted down next to Bollinger and gave him a gentle pat on the cheek. Idiot, he said sadly, and followed Kaz out of the exchange. From the roof, Inej continued to watch as Uman picked up and holstered Giles' gun, and the black tips said a few quiet words to each other. Don't leave, Big Bollinger begged. Don't leave me. He tried to cling onto the cuffs of Giles' trousers. Giles shook him off. They left him curled on his side, leaking blood onto the cobblestones. Inej plucked Van Dahl's rifle from his hands before she released him. Go home, she told the guard. He cast a single terrified glance over his shoulder and sprinted off down the walkway. Far below, Big Bull had started trying to drag himself across the floor of the exchange. He might be stupid enough to cross Kaz Brecker, but he survived this long in the barrel, and that took will. He might make it. Help him, a voice inside her said. Until a few moments ago, he'd been her brother in arms. It seemed wrong to leave him alone. She could go to him. offer to put him out of his misery quickly, hold his hand as he passed. She could fetch a medic to save him. Instead, she spoke a quick prayer in the language of her saints, and began the steep climb down the outer wall. Inej pitied the boy, who might die alone, with no one to comfort him in his last hours, or who might live and spend his life as an exile. But the night's work wasn't yet over, and the Wraith didn't have time for traitors.